Hello, everyone who is joining us from wherever you may be joining us from. This is the breakout session, What are the SDGs? The UN Sustainable Development Goals. I'm talking about these as a new language that nonprofits, teams, and brands are using to communicate more effectively with their audience. I'm not sure if we want to jump right in, if we want to give it a minute. Your thoughts on that, Brian?
I say we go for it.
All right, let's keep everybody on track and reward the punctual. I'm a big believer in that. So our panelists today are Ms. Kristen Fulmer, founder of Recipric, Jeff Golner, founder of STEM Sports, Ms. Blair Neelands with the Portland Timbers and Thorns, who is the sustainability and and outreach coordinator for the Thorns, and myself, I'm the founder of 5T Sports Group. So I'm going to kick us off a little bit here with what are these SDGs and a little bit about who I'm, what my company does. We work with professional teams, leagues, and major events on creating triple bottom line impact from their operations and their outreach. This is a beauty shot of where I normally work from, which is beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. You can see the cursor. I live just about here, at the base of these mountains. But let's get right into it. What we've seen, and not unless you've been really, really asleep or in a mild coma, is been a seismic shift in what's been going on with brand strategy and messaging over these last few months. Many of the brands, companies that we're familiar with, have jumped in to social and environmental justice issues. They've been kind of steadily creeping in, but now we're really seeing them all in. And just to give you an idea of what that's looking like out in the marketplace, we now see about 86% of consumers, and this is across all age groups. This is a North American statistic, expect companies to stand for more than profit. Yeah, shareholder value is not good enough. They want you to be out there doing something. And then what we saw in June was a fairly widespread survey that indicated about 65% of the brands that we typically see advertising for are shifting their messaging. And that is more to purpose and action, again, on social and environmental and economic issues as well. Things like fair wages. We also saw that 65% of consumers are responding to how the brands are acting during the pandemic. It's important to them what that brand did. They're taking a look, and 33% of them have already punished a brand who they felt did not treat their employees well or were not responding in a responsible manner. So we're seeing some very, very rapid shifts. Again, Blackout Tuesday was massively significant. Stop Paid for Profit happened in the course of a weekend with about 100 companies pulling their advertising from social media. So this is what we're seeing out in the marketplace. The private sector companies that are funding many grassroots sports and many of the CSR programs that various NGOs are delivering. And to take a look at who those companies are, again, it's not just Ben and Jerry's or Patagonia. It's a lot of mainstream brands, automotive, insurance, alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages, food, telecommunications, all of them. And this is what we're going to speak about today. This is the new language that they're using. And, whoever might be on the, I put a question into the chat of who has seen these, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 goals that are interrelated. They're designed to bring us all together around economic, social, and environmental issues that need to be resolved by 2030 for us to live on a prosperous and healthy planet. So I'll take a moment and look in the chat and see. I'm able to bring up the chat, it looks like. See what our general familiarity was with those. Maybe one of my co-presenters who can see the chat can give me an indication. Oh, here, never mind. We found it. So I don't know if anybody wants to respond or respond as we go to whether these are new to you, whether you're an old pro. But to give you a look and see who is using this new language to communicate what is important to them, what they're acting upon, we've done a little cheat sheet for you. Because I work primarily in professional sports, we always show them who the big spenders are and what they're doing. So these are which of the goals they've committed to. And you'll see not everyone is embracing all 17 goals. They're looking at where it makes the most sense for them to react and to act. So for some of those, it's, obviously if they're in production, they're looking at things that then involve materials and responsible production of goods. You see all the non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverage companies all are focused on water because it's a core ingredient to what they do. So with that, I will kick it back over. I think we're going to start with Jeff to tell us a little bit about STEM sports and how they're using and leveraging the SDGs. Take it away, Jeff.
Great, thank you, Aileen.
And leave it to you.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here real fast. My deck. Yes, I'm Jeff Golner, President and CEO of STEM Sports. And in the simplest of terms, let's see if we can put this together. We're really a STEM education company that happens to use sports as the real life application, and that application happens in classrooms, after school programming in camps, and we're pretty much throughout the U.S. and starting to explore a lot of opportunities internationally with some pilot programs happening in about 5 or 6 different countries right now. So how do we line up with all of the UN SDGs? Obviously for sure we're very much aligned with quality education. Finding that that's a big need in all the areas that we already are in, and that's really our main driver of what we provide. So that's an important asset, something that we really are trying to marry ourselves with those goals and what the outcomes will be in 2030. I think the first and foremost thing that's super important that we try to identify is the fact that what is STEM is really kind of our core. It's really who we are and why we do what we do. And if everyone understands what STEM is, then we can all get along. But for those that don't, just in case, the purpose of STEM, born 20 plus years ago, was that the U.S. government and Department of Education and National Science Foundation kind of found that the number of jobs that were going to be available to young students once they left education, where they needed STEM skills, was going to be almost too great. In fact, there's the studies now say that there won't be enough human beings to fill the jobs that are going to be available to them once they are out of their education, whether that be at grade 12 or beyond. The running joke is that there's a lot of feelings that, well, no, the robots are taking over. Well, until the robots are building robots and human beings not behind that, no, this is still going to be an outstanding issue. So STEM was created so that we can start building STEM skills into young students, and they can also find their career paths potentially at an earlier age. I think we could all maybe appreciate that in some way, shape, or form, that maybe in those middle school grades, you actually start to see or identify jobs at that earlier age, which makes your education more relevant. I'd like to think that STEM education and STEM sports as education actually answers that age-old question of, why do I have to learn this? You hear that from students all the time. And so if you can correlate it to work, correlate it to a job, it makes it just more meaningful education. And that's kind of what we're there to do. So that's our hope there. Beyond that, beyond the quality education goal, we also use partnerships to kind of get our outreach even deeper. And one of our partnerships is with Skyhawks Sports. They are an after-school and summer camp sports program, and their motto is training life skills through sports. And through our partnership, we also are ingrained in 25 different programs. 25 different states, and they're programming in a franchise and or corporate model. And they also are growing outwardly internationally. So this allows us through that partnership to grow and other different sustainable goals, no doubt. Now, within our own curriculum, we definitely touch on this also. For an example, in soccer, in our STEM soccer program, we talk about caloric burn and heart rate and things. They kind of boil down to that grade school level where we basically say, how much soccer do you have to play to burn off the pizza that you ate in the cafeteria at lunchtime? So making it a little bit more relevant to those students, and that's another part of what we do and the goals that we're aligned with. Partnerships also mean professional sports teams, and so we worked with Phoenix Suns recently. And one of the things that came of that partnership, in addition to just basically private labeling, so to speak, our curriculum with the Phoenix Suns brand, was one of the outcomes was that we purposely identified Title I schools to receive the curriculum at no cost. And so that was a give that we developed with the Suns, and actually did the research as to the Title I schools that we wish to work with. And some really good came out of that. The feedback from the teachers was outstanding, and the students were well served, where otherwise they may not have had that great opportunity to blend STEM and sports together. So I think. Oh, and then one last partnership that hopefully a lot of us are aware of is Beyond Sport. Has given us a lot of opportunities, and really kind of edged and nudged us forward into the sustainable development goals. About a year ago, we had the opportunity to have a roundtable with the likes of Nike, ESPN, the Dodgers Foundation, and others, where we culminated kind of our thoughts around how STEM education and sports can kind of really align and forge a relationship where we could activate against the goals that are out there. Those pieces of that puzzle were actually presented to the UN the very next week. So the utilization of pro athletes with the message that STEM education is important, propping up PE teachers to be important, role models and triggers for quality education and things of that nature came of that. And so, those are just some great ways that partnerships also can help move towards the SDGs, and 2030 will come fast enough, and hopefully we've attained what those objectives were for those goals. And proud to be part of that. And there's his contact information. Thank you very much. Yeah, pass it back to Aileen for our next presentation.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. I'm sure there's going to be quite a few questions, and we'll have questions come into the chat box, if you will, as they come to you, and we'll take those as we go once we've heard from everyone. So next, we're going to pop over and listen to a little bit about what's going on in Portland these days with the Timbers and the Thorns, courtesy of Blair Neelands.
All right. Good morning, everybody. There we go. My name is Blair Neelands. I'm the Sustainability and Outreach Coordinator for the Portland Timbers and Thorns, and I'm excited to share a little bit about a couple of our programs and how they align with the UN SDGs. First, just to explain a little bit about who we are, the Portland Timbers are our men's club, and we're part of the MLS, and the Thorns are our women's team in the NWSL, and Stand Together is the name of our community outreach platform. And it really represents the relationship between the Timbers, Thorns, and our fans, and signifies our commitment to being champions on and off the pitch. Our mission is to harness the power of sport to improve the lives of children and families. And our focus areas really tie in well with the UN SDGs, activity and wellness, education, environmental sustainability, and social justice are really what we focus on. And first, I want to talk about Stand Together Week is one of our club's biggest initiatives every year. It's a program that touches every single person in our organization, from front office staff to athletes to coaches, our corporate partners and our supporters all come together for a common good. This year, it looked slightly different than in years past. But last year, for example, we had 32 volunteer activities over the course of 7 days. In support of 25 nonprofits, and we activated 1,000 volunteers over that time. So it's quite an undertaking, but it's just such a unique opportunity to have our fans come and join us alongside our corporate partners. You can end up, painting a house or working in the garden next to Timber Joey, our mascot, or someone like Christine Sinclair, who's the all-time leading goal scorer in international football. So it's incredibly unique and something that we all look forward to. And this year, as I mentioned, it looked different due to COVID restrictions. We make sure that Stand Together Week is a partnership between us and our nonprofits, and we really look to elevate their mission and their message through this programming. So we work directly with them to identify whether it was in-person events that were needed, virtual volunteering, individual support opportunities. So while this year was challenging, it really allowed us to expand our programming and support in a larger way than we have in years past. So I selected a few of the SDGs here, but Stand Together Week tends to touch all of them. But a couple of these were really important this year. Zero hunger and good health and well-being are obvious. We did several projects with the food bank and Boys and Girls Club to get food boxes to people. We held blood drives at our stadium, which was incredibly unique. You could donate blood and watch the Thorns practice at the same time. We supported an organization that it's the Children's Book Bank. They offer free books, free brand new books to kids in underserved areas in our city, but specifically we supported their Story Like Mine program, which also touches on equity, where the main character of every book comes from a diverse background. So it's really such an important program. And then we also have several kind of cleanup events every year. So Stand Together Week is always such a big event for us, and it was great to put it on this year despite everything. Next, I'd like to talk about another really unique program. Fields for All is our program. Since 2011, we've built 16 soccer or futsal courts around the greater Portland area. And we try to identify what we call recreation deserts to get kids out and active in these communities. And this year we had an incredible opportunity arise where we could support a local organization here in Portland called African Road, and they have been supporting an organization in Rwanda called the Togetherness Cooperative. I could probably spend our entire session this morning explaining this program, so I'll just drop an article in the chat box. But essentially, this program has arisen from incredible strength by people in Rwanda, and we are a small support to help them build a phase 1 regulation junior pitch. And it's just a great example of a partnership working toward the goal. But what I want to highlight is for gender equity and economic growth, Stand Together has a merchandise line we like to leverage in order to generate revenue for local organizations. And for this program, we specifically designed a scarf, which every football fan needs a scarf, and a patch, which the Timbers Army and the Rose City Riveters are all about their patches. And the proceeds from these are going to support 2 different programs in Rwanda. One is to encourage families to send their kids to play, and you receive a rabbit or a chicken, and it helps them learn self-sufficiency and generate some economic revenue for them. And then the second portion is there is a girls soccer club that plays at this pitch, and the coach is an amazing young woman who is aspiring to go to college. And so the other half of this is supporting a scholarship program for her to maintain being the coach of the team, as well as give her an opportunity to go to college. So truly, I will drop that article link in the chat box, and you have to read it. It's amazing. And then the third one I'd like to highlight is an opportunity that came up this year in January that was kind of an aha moment for several of us and highlights the goal number 17. We've worked with a local organization called Looped Works for a couple years, where we turn old Timbers and Thorns gear and material into new items. We've done backpacks and fanny packs, and there's some really cool new Thorns wallets coming out for Christmas this year. But in January, when the team was down in Costa Rica, we decided to work with one of our corporate partners, Daimler Trucks North America, which also has a very large sustainability platform. And last year I was talking with my counterpart over there about how we always have unused swag that sits and collects dust in the basement somewhere. We all have it. And it would be really cool to combine on a project. And it just kind of fell together for this project. And we started designing some backpacks with Looped Works, and we reached out to a local contact down in Costa Rica and asked what would be beneficial to the people there when we come for the tournament. And she said educational materials for youth, especially in January. Mid to late January is when they return to school. And so to take it a step farther, all the organizations involved held a kind of fundraiser to purchase school supplies through a local nonprofit here in Portland called Schoolhouse Supplies. We filled those bags full and sent them down with the team. And we welcomed the kids into the practice facility. There was about 200 of them. They all got to run around with the Timbers. They all got a backpack, set them up to return to school the next week. So it's really a great example of goal number 17, all of us coming together, as well as number 12 really represents our commitment to being aware of our consumption and our production and trying to address that and still provide fans with materials without going overboard. And with that, this is my contact info. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks so much, Blair. That's really inspiring stuff. And I know that's just a tip of the iceberg of all the Stand Together projects, but as well these projects that are taking you further afield, putting that Timbers Thorns brand out there around the world.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, fantastic. We're gonna also continue a little bit on the athletes theme and hand it over to Kristen Fulmer from Recipric, who, among other things, is working with an organization called Eco Athletes, but many other things. So, Kristen, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to follow such amazing work and so broad-reaching, which I think is really, what's so great and exciting about the UN SDGs is that it can look like so many different things. And so at Recipric, the organization that I run, I broadly call it a positive change agency. I think we would all agree that any work towards the UN SDGs is positive change and something that we all need more of. And so Recipric hopes to basically kind of be that in-house brain for organizations who can't necessarily hire someone to think about sustainability all the time or drive towards these missions holistically. Recipric can come in and help organizations with some of that vision, goal setting, strategy, and then really plugs in the right experts, which is why partnerships UN SDG 17 is highlighted there. Because I try to be a generalist and approach things thinking about really what is the best UN SDGs, or as Aileen says, pick your flavor sometimes to figure out what makes sense, and then find the right vendors or experts to really help the organizations take that a step further and make that happen. And I think it's important that I think we've spoken on it, but it's clear that you don't have to do all 17 goals really well or even address them to have a really great, impactful project. And I think it's actually even more impactful when you have leadership of an organization that picks a few specific, very relevant SDGs and then goes kind of full force on that, and it trickles down through the organization. So a lot of times I'm working with organizations that are really getting started on their sustainability journey. And so it really is picking the right flavor, things that are most relevant or where you can have the most impact. And I think that's important to highlight. And sometimes it even has to do with, what has touched people personally. And that kind of personal aspect to get that positive change going, I think is really important. And one of the reasons that I work with an organization called Eco Athletes. So Eco Athletes is a nonprofit that's really aimed to inspire athletes to speak out and take climate action, speak out on climate change. Basically, it's Eco Athletes has identified that athletes have this tremendous power and platform to create that positive change, incentivize and catalyze positive change, and really a passion in a lot of ways for getting involved in whatever SDG makes sense for them. And so Eco Athletes doesn't necessarily pick one specific SDG and assign athletes and say you must speak out on this. Although generally climate action is kind of the biggest theme. And, that's kind of built on the fact that we've realized in speaking with a lot of athletes that a lot of the hesitation in thinking about climate action, or really addressing a lot of the other SDGs for athletes, group of athletes, even organizations that support athletes, is really just that it's an uncomfortable topic. People don't feel like they know the scientific facts, or they aren't really sure how to go about it when sports very complicated. Maybe there's some backlash in terms of, well, how can you take climate action if you travel so much? And so dealing with and being able and equipped to understand and kind of come back from that in an impactful way and speak out on it is really challenging. And we've realized that. So this kind of biggest highlight of climate action is really built upon quality education. But then climate action, once you have that education, needs an outlet. We do a lot of kind of the back end strategy and communications efforts with athletes and groups of athletes. But then, athletes say, okay, well, how do I do something about it? I learned all of this. What next? Partnerships for Eco Athletes is really important because, we can help athletes be connected with organizations, maybe some of which that Blair and Jeff described earlier, but basically ways to get out there and engage with fans and really use that platform towards climate action and towards other related environmental sustainability efforts. And so far, Eco Athletes launched about 6 months ago. So far, there's kind of a team of Eco Athlete champions that have really taken on this mission and been really big advocates for us as an organization, but also just making really amazing commitments in their communities. And in some cases, they're still professional athletes that kind of do this on the side. And in some cases, they're either on the off season or have professionally now taken on climate action and other SDGs as kind of their full-time work. And so one of those examples is an athlete named Gary Gilliam, who's an NFL football player who most recently played with the 49ers, but spent a lot of time in Seattle on Super Bowl winning teams. And he also has a teammate named Jordan Hill that's part of this team at the Bridge. And so the Bridge is a much more kind of physical manifestation of the SDGs, where Eco Athletes is more conceptual and based on education and communications. The Bridge is what they call an eco village, but physical redevelopment project. The first of which in the images on the left that you see is a pilot location in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where Gary Gilliam and Jordan Hill and a few others on the team are a part of. I represent kind of the sustainability strategy for the organization, but it was called Eco Athletes, or excuse me, it was called an Eco Village before I got there, and it's because the SDGs, all of them really are ingrained in the project, but I've highlighted a few that I wanted to cover because I think it's a really special project in an amazing way that athletes have taken on ways to address their personal passions in a way that they feel to be most impactful. So the Eco Village concept, the WELP that you see at the top is actually WEL squared P now, because it's work, eat, live, learn, and play. So all of these elements are physically built into a building, like I said, in this case in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but in communities that are historically under-resourced, and most of them having to do with really systemic racism and a lot of underlying historic challenges in some of these communities that have gotten them to the point of being under-resourced. And so the main goal of the bridge is to reduce these inequalities, which is why SDG number 10 is so big there, but really built upon industry, innovation, infrastructure, because again, they're bringing in experts, plugging in experts physically to make and address some of these positive changes in the community. So they're kind of physically building out the space, but then finding the right healthcare partners, the right co-working space, the right affordable housing, let's see, I didn't say eat, the right community gardens and actually vertical garden space that's going in there, plugging them in, and really having them address all of these and provide really all of these resources to a community. And again, it's kind of contingent and built upon the SDGs to the right there, but we're really kind of addressing many of the SDGs. And I think what's interesting, and maybe it's just a personal note here, but I thought it was interesting that both of the projects that I've highlighted highlight Goal 17 as a really critical part. But I also think it's interesting that on the previous slide, we have kind of a more blue-green tone addressing some of the environmental SDGs, and the bridge addresses kind of warmer tones of the colors of the SDGs. And I think that that's because this one is addressed more for people-centric as opposed to environmental-centric. And I just think it's really fascinating and great to know that these projects, one isn't better than the other. And they're each addressing really important issues in their communities in different ways, and leveraging kind of just the right color that meet their goals and what their mission and vision is. So I think that's about all I wanted to cover. Happy to answer questions. I know I saw one in the chat. This is me, so happy to answer any other questions after the fact as well. Thanks so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Kristen. That's a great item to highlight, because there's actually a very cool image of the SDGs. I don't have it handy, but it's a layer cake, and it shows, here's the 4 that are the basically planet related, as opposed to then the next layer that is the people, and the layer on top, which is more of the economics and infrastructure elements. So good job highlighting that for those who are kind of new to the SDGs. And it looks like the question that we have is a little bit about how do you get started, the initial question we have here. And as you're talking, I went out and grabbed a little bit of a graphic that might prove helpful, because one of the things that we do is walk people through kind of a progression of learning, and then starting to really go deeper with the SDGs and then understand. So I'm just going to pop that up for a second here, and then maybe some of my co-presenters might have other similar things. See if I can make that a little bit bigger. There we go, and get some things out of the way. I don't know if when you see my screen, you're just seeing that graphic or everything, including the Zoom controls. But when we walk people through, getting started is the biggest deal. And that's why we were also keen to do this session today. For those who haven't taken put a toe in the water with the SDGs, or maybe they've seen them, but not really understand what or how to use them, getting conversant with what they are, and then taking your organization's current programs, which is why it was so great to set this up this way as well, and say, this is a program that we're already doing. We're not trying to grab an SDG and create something around it. We're taking what we naturally do and naturally care about, and we're mapping it. we're saying, oh, wow, this actually touches on this one primarily. And actually, it kind of touches on these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 others as well. And I think the other thing that you saw was everybody talked about SDG 17, because frankly, nothing happens without multiple people getting involved. We've had systemic breakdowns in our society across various issues, and now we really need to reweave that social fabric, and bring together the systems that we've kind of broken apart and looked at for too long in isolation. But regardless, this is a little bit of that map, the progress that we go through with, for instance, a professional league or a team, getting deeper into mapping those, getting around the metrics. So specific to the question, the difficulty right now, I think, is for people to measure to them. But those resources are out there. But obviously you can't measure until you really understand what you're working with. And then as we go on with people, we work in then optimizing those programs with those partners, as we showed you. You find the partners who care the most about the things that you're actually working on. It looked like Blair had a few naturals in there for some of the things with, the Fields for All, or Fields for All. And then, obviously in the space that we're working in, the sports industry and sports media are so huge that they're the natural place to amplify this impact. And that is what brands are looking for now. So if you're joining us from a nonprofit or a grassroots sports organization or a sports foundation, we felt this is really important stuff to start to take a look at, because you can use it for more than just communicating what you're about, but also leveraging, finding partnerships, and which, as we've said, are so important, and then amplifying in a language that a lot of people are starting to use. So I'll stop the share there in case some of my co-presenters have something also interesting that kind of ties the room together, as we say. The Big Lebowski reference, it had to happen. Or if we have some other questions in the chat. Now I'm going to go to the Ferris Bueller reference. Anyone?
I was just going to add that I think, a lot of time organizations are just getting started. Sometimes it really can be kind of a personal passion that really kind of catalyzes how to start to address these, because it can be really intimidating even to have 17 in front of you and not really know where to start or how they can connect together, and say, okay, well, I'm really passionate about, maybe it's, I grew up in a place that is very severely affected by hurricanes. And so maybe there's one specifically, or I used to work at a food bank, so maybe I'm really passionate about this one SDG. And then that can actually almost kind of catalyze and just start kind of doing some research and figuring out, okay, who in the area could I partner with to help address this, and maybe what else are they working on? So I think it's, a lot of this grows really organically and naturally and doesn't have to necessarily be forced, no matter what type of organization it is. I think it, like you said, Aileen, it's about kind of just finding a new framework to address things you're probably already doing or thinking about. So I think that's what's really exciting about it. Like we said, and I think all of us talked about it, it can look like so many different types of things.
Yeah, I think, Kristen, you touched on it in your presentation, that it can be a little overwhelming when you look at 17 different things and there's, a lot happening, and you can definitely just look at what you're already doing and start to assign, because that's kind of where we are, even, is just looking at our programs and how they fit and how we can leverage them to make the program bigger and to work on that amplifying piece that Aileen talked about. And you don't have to start from scratch. You don't need to throw out everything you've been doing just to try to find a way that you touch all 17 of these.
I thought I'd just put them up for fun while everyone's chatting, since we keep referring to them, but we were a little cheeky and just flashed them up and didn't keep them up.
You make a case that that we're lucky to have them. That there's actually something, there's obviously a lot of deep thought, and there's certainly goals to meet, and so yeah, especially if you're starting maybe at zero, an organization, an entity, an NGO, an individual that's looking to make a difference. There's a great reference to ways that they can make a difference, and certainly know that others are aiming for that as well. So I like them. I like having them as a reference, and almost I don't. If I was in a normal office situation, I'm at home, I'd probably have this up on a board that would be visible, so we can just kind of always keep our reference to them, and make sure that we're quote unquote checking the box, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I really love about them, especially in leveraging them in sports, is that they're simple. They have some nice bright colors to them, like jersey colors. They have numbers, and they have really simple clarification of what this is about. So it gets away from those of us who have been working in sustainability of all forms for a long time, and social justice issues. The words we use to describe these things are so long. It starts to become very academic, a little bit ivory tower, and people, well, we're working with marginalized communities to address food deserts. Holy smokes. How about zero hunger? Oh, okay. I understand that. How about reduced inequalities? Oh, now I understand what you're talking about. So I just think there's such a brilliant language for anybody working in any space, really, but highly suited to sports. And again, for those who are listening in, who are coming from grassroots organizations, NGOs who are achieving these, fantastic language to play match game with potential new corporate partners. And in case you're wondering how to do that, one of the best places you can go is into their website, look for their sustainability report, even their annual report. You are going to see these icons pop up in their websites. Like I would say, the global top 3,000 companies. For some, they're very prominent. Others, you might have to dig a little bit, but I guarantee you they're there. And one of the other places you can look is the UN Global Compact, which is the association of corporations that have signed on to the SDGs. And there they publicly report on their progress every year. They're obligated to do it. So actually that may be one of your best places to start. But if you're working with a current partner, a Microsoft or even if it's a large chain, like a food service chain or something, great place to start. And you might find the person you're working with isn't familiar that their corporation is working in this area, but you can point them to it and say, this is where all the progressive kids are hanging out. Who knows? Maybe you'll get somebody a promotion in your company. So I'm checking. It looks like we might have a couple things popping up in the chat. Not so much questions, but thank yous.
There was a question
yeah.
about corporate partners, and if corporate partners are getting a little bit more excited about the SDGs.
Yeah, indeed. I know, the little circle at the end there, the icon for the global goals as a whole, that segmented circle. I often wear that pin. Well, we're not seeing people in person so much, but wherever I wear that pin, people are asking me about it. And once you tell them, they're thoroughly excited. But I do go to a fair number of corporate gatherings, especially things where a lot of B Corps gather. They are excited about them. And I think it's because they also find this is such an easy way to explain what we care about, as opposed to getting bogged down in all that language. And I think that there's also an appreciation for that, being able to pick and choose goals. I think you see in this community, people are saying, yeah, we might not be able to address all 17, but these 4, we're all in on. Or these 3 are our total priorities, and as we work on those, we touch on these 5 or 6. So I think it's a sigh of relief for them. In my experience, I don't know, you guys can share yours.
I was just going to say that, Aileen, you shared all of those statistics at the beginning about how, people are more increasingly, consumers generally vote with their dollar and are thinking about these things and asking these questions. and are equipped with all of the language of these SDGs. And so I think a lot of ways corporations are getting savvy about how to address these in new ways and share their strategies to help meet these. And like you said, then those can connect to organizations at any scale to be great partners or advocates and voices on behalf of all of these things.
Yeah, and coming from the team side, I don't often end up having conversations like I had with Daimler, where I'm talking directly to somebody who is speaking sustainability. I'm often talking to my colleagues that work in sponsorship and partnership marketing. And so when I start throwing out those terms that are even confusing to those of us who work in the field, it's going straight over their head. And so if I can use these to talk to them and then they talk to the corporate partner and vice versa, it has really helped to identify, hey, this goal is really important to this partner and we're addressing it with this program. We should collaborate.
Yeah.
And that's where I've found it's most helpful for us.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of the spaces where we're working right now, especially because so many partnerships departments are devastated. To point that out, to say, look, hey, this is a great tool for you to use.
Right.
You first start with everybody who's an existing partner for you, whether that's Budweiser or Coke or Pepsi or Verizon or whomever, and look into their stuff. And here's a new conversation you can have with them. And fortunately, in your case, you've got someone in house who can say, yeah, these are the ones we're looking at. So you go take those, do your research and go at it. And it often brings in opportunities for other funding to come in. You can reach beyond the marketing budget of those partners. Some of them are employee engagement budgets. Some of them are just, there's quite a few.
Yeah, actually, the
development budgets, things like
that. The backpacks was not through our partnership budget. That was through a sustainability employee resource group at Diamond.
Yeah, because that's the other thing that's necessary, not just to respond to consumers, but employee activists. We've seen a lot of that this year, and that is not going to go away. It started last year with the climate strike, right? It's carried on through Black Lives Matter. It's carried on through election and civic duty. It's carrying on through buy local advocacy, as we saw with the Mavs leading the way, and in terms of saying, here, employees go out and support the local economy. But employees are also outing their companies where they're not doing what they say they're doing. So the expectation on action is high.
I have a friend that is doing that type of work at the granular level with employees at a large company. And short of him having maybe the 17 goals in front of them, he picked them apart to find out, okay, if you had the choice of making some volunteer hours happen with company time, where would you put those? And so I think he was cuming all of that. I think he was also saying that unfortunately, you got a lot of, not unfortunate, I shouldn't say that, but doesn't apply to the 17, a lot of animal welfare and pet resource employees wanted to put their efforts towards those. But that's one thing. And then Blair, getting back, and talking about that swirl of basically, in our case, the quality education piece has obviously become very relevant based on the fact that, schools are in disarray. Learning's happening this way, which is, it's just the next best thing. Obviously, there's nothing better than in person. And in our case, we've been talking with teams that are up on the top of the chart that have almost no more. I mean, this has obviously changed the last 6 months or so. Prior, they were short of inventory, and they were looking for new things that they could offer the relevant partner, and assigning, if you will, STEM sports to them, finding that right partner. But more times than not, we were talking about there's a partner out there you probably haven't spoken to, a brand new partner, brand new source of revenue coming in, and utilization of, in our case, our assets. So, even when I was using the Suns as an example, that was their own dollars. They committed that through their community affairs department budget line items. So but we all had a goal of, okay, well, let's go find a partner so it's not costing you, and you can actually develop a partnership with the corporate entities. So hopefully when things kind of get back to normal, those opportunities will come back.
Yeah, I think that's the other wonderful thing right now, coming back to that magical goal 17, is we're at the place where teams are looking for these assets to put out there that are the assets that the corporations, the brands want, which are something substantive, action oriented. They're not really so keen as more on the swap outs, the emergency swap outs of assets, like digital programs. Organizations such as yours, Jeff, are providing that, and Kristen with the Bridge and Eco Athletes are also providing that substantive programming. So you're the delivery partner, you've got the team as the amplification, the facilitation partner, and then the brand as the funding partner. So again, a model, I think, if we have folks who are in representing foundations or delivery programs, consider that the pro team is really your media outlet in a lot of ways, a little bit of extra lifting and possibly a conduit to a funding partner. But you're giving them something that's plug and play. And if you're the team, instead of maybe running around like crazy trying to create a new digital, widget or some social media campaign, you're like, wait a minute, maybe we could just go down the block and amplify something that's already happening, that we care about. And metrics. You gave a lot of great numbers there, Blair. That was fantastic. I know you all have them. Maybe you can throw a few extras in the chat. But when you can report back, this many volunteer hours, this many projects, this many, so much more important than just this many eyeballs, right? Or this many likes. And I know many of the NGOs and foundations that we have listening have those numbers. They're very, very good at that. Okay.
Yeah, the future will be this many organizations that have committed to UN SDGs. So I think that's the exciting.
These levels of impact, like real impact. This many kids reading at a higher level. This many girls through a recreational program that also built leadership skills. This many trees planted. Really nice, tangible stuff. Way better than likes. All right. Oh, one more coming into the chat, and I think we're just about at time. Okay. That is from one of our fearless leaders from Sports Philanthropy Network. Okay, well, it's just left to me to thank you all for your wonderful contributions every day, but in particular here in bringing your experiences and your wisdom to this broader Sports Philanthropy Network. Okay, and I guess we'll all say goodbye in the Zoom way.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Aileen.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Cheers.